You mean to tell me that people can drop thousands of dollars in church every Sunday, but when a baby needs formula, the answer is silence? I'm sure a lot of you by now have seen the woman who ran the social experiment, calling 42 churches, pretending to be the mother who couldn't afford baby formula. Out of 42, only 9 said yes. But what it exposed was the truth. Because these weren't totally random calls. These are people that were sending her names of these churches to actually try. And the results were still the same. These were houses of worship. The same places that preach love, generosity, and help your neighbor every week. And yet when a mother said, my baby hasn't eaten since last night, most of those phones went cold. Some of them said, oh, well, we don't do that here. Some said, oh, fill out this form. Some of them just hung up. But the smaller churches, the ones that are barely keeping their lights on, they're the ones who helped. Meanwhile, these mega churches with the LED walls and the luxury coffee bars and pastors in the designer sneakers, they couldn't find $20 for a hungry child. That's not faith. That's business.
There's a woman on TikTok who's doing a social experiment where she is calling churches to ask about baby formula to see if any of them will actually help them out. And she called a mosque and they actually would help them out, while none of the churches. And this doesn't surprise me as a pastor. And I talk a lot about Muslim zakat. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, where Muslim communities and Muslims are obligated to provide charity to the community. Churches, they are not obligated. We hope that they're going to be able to be philanthropic and donate into their community. And my church has a food bank that I'm very proud of, but not every church has a discretionary fund. As a pastor, I have a discretionary fund, but also there's a scam going on right now in churches. My assistant this week got a text saying, hi, this is Pastor Burke, Pastor Tom. Can you send me the directory of the church? Because what scammers do is they go through the directory of churches. They go through online directories and they email and they scam all members of churches and they say, can you send me a Visa gift card? Can you send me this gift card? That is something that happens. Churches get scammed all of the time. And so if you think the response to churches saying no to helping baby formula is to tax the churches, we spend $1 trillion a year on our military, on bombing other countries. We are right now bombing fishermen in the ocean. We spend less than 1% of our GDP, less than 1% of our budget on helping poor people, on food aid, on SNAP, on food assistance. So I don't understand why people want to tax the church when that tax money is just going to the military. Churches, the money that is donated to churches as a nonprofit or charity has already been taxed. And I understand that people want people on food assistance, people who need baby formula should get that help. But taxing the churches is not going to do that. All you're going to do is take money from churches and give it to the military and give it to the government, which is not helping poor people at all. Well, if you want to reform the tax code, that's fine. I'm all about it. But taxing churches would close small churches that actually do provide local philanthropic efforts to the community. And it would do nothing to the mega churches that you really want to actually get rid of. Churches like Joel Osteen, who doesn't do anything. These churches like Mark Driscoll. People, if you call those types of churches, of course they're not going to help. But if you call a small town church that well, they're going to try and do whatever they can to help you. So the answer is not taxing the churches, because then you're just taking money from churches and giving it to the military.
I'd like to have my own social experiment, if I could, for just a second. If somebody walked in the back door right now asking for a can of baby formula, how many of you would help? Just show by a raise of hands. There's your social experiment. That's who GBC is.
This nut is calling churches asking for formula for her baby that she says is starving, and when the churches cannot provide her formula, she blasts them all over social media. But she's not the biggest nut. Watch this video to the end and I'm going to show you a clip that will just shock you. But here's the setup. I was made aware of this video and then I saw it for myself, and this woman on her TikTok page, she has many videos of her calling these churches. This is how she does. She has a sound of a baby crying on a recording and she plays it, right? And so she calls the churches up and she asks them for one specific thing, formula. Now when the person who answers that phone says, well, we don't have formula, we have food, or I tell you what, hey, we can point you in this direction, you can get your formula at this place, this is a place that we support. No, I tried there, I called, no, they said to call the churches, and she goes on and says, sorry, we don't have formula, and then she blasts them. And here's her catch in all this. I thought you were pro-life. If you were pro-life, why would you deny baby formula? See, this is an attack. And let me explain, give you a little background on all of this that's going on. I'm a pastor. I pastor a church, and I've been in ministry long enough. And maybe you, on the other side of this screen, you don't know this. Churches are abused so much. They are taken advantage of so much. I'm talking about good churches. Now, I know there are some corrupt churches out there. They are all for the money. But let me tell you, there are so many good churches out there to help people. We centered on the gospel and help those in need, but we get abused ourselves. Just to give you an example of this. Years ago, had a guy called a church. He was asking for help for his family. He said his wife had cancer and she was dying, and he had small kids and they needed help and all these things. And so I talked to this man and I said, you know what, we don't have any food available here, but I tell you, we're going to get you food. And so we went and we bought him some food. And then one time our church had a spaghetti dinner, right? And I think it was Valentine's night of all things. But anyway, we had a little dinner. And so I brought that to him, me and some of the deacons at the church at the time, and we were trying to meet his needs and provide for him, you know. But one time he called the church. After we did all this stuff for him, he called the church and said, I need some money, pay my bills and this and that. I said, brother, we can't, you know, we don't have cash on hand. We don't just give out cash. And let me tell you, that man cussed me out. And he said, I don't want your blankety blank dry food, and hung up the phone on me. I said, my goodness. That's just one example. And then come to find out, this man, this is what he did. He called the churches all around, and he had that same story. Sometimes he would twist it up a little bit, change it up a little bit. Especially if he called a church twice, he would change it up. And that's what he did. You wouldn't believe how many times that happens. And so for this woman to get on here and to say, oh, you don't have formula? Let me tell you, even if a church, and not all churches do this, our church, we don't do this. What we do is we used to have a food pantry that we would do, but it's keeping up with it. And then when somebody has to be in the office through the week, so what we do is we help a food pantry in our community. We support them, we provide for them, and so they help the community. And then when it comes down to babies in need, oh, listen, we are pro-life from the womb to the tomb, and we are proud of that. But we don't have diapers and formulas on hand. I don't know any church, and maybe they do, but I know we don't have formula. And when you think about formula, there has to be a certain kind of formula. Some babies, they get sick if they take different formulas, and you know, it messes with their digestive system. And so we don't just have formula on hand.
Yeah, the way some Christians and churches are responding to that viral baby formula situation is honestly unhinged. Nicole called a bunch of churches pretending to have a starving baby. Most of them turned her down, and now some of these churches are snapping back like they're the ones who were wronged. One church straight up said what she did was evil, compared it to witchcraft, called her a liar, said she has the spirit of a witch, and claimed if she came near the church, she'd be dealt with swiftly over a phone call asking for baby formula. That's the level of drama we're on. Then that same church tried to clean it up in service. The pastor asked the congregation, if a mother in need was at our doors, raise your hand if you'd help her. Hands went up and he said, that's the only social experiment I need. Sir, that was a staged moment in a room full of people trying not to look heartless. When someone actually asked for help, the answer was no. Another pastor, also from a church that told her no, said they're not obligated to help her, and that the only reason the mosque stepped up is because they're obligated by their faith. He went on about scam calls and not being able to prove she's in need. Sure, scams exist, but the mosque still chose compassion first instead of suspicion. Let me know what y'all think, because this whole situation is turning into a real talk about faith, responsibility, and who actually practices what they preach.